For my stats project, I did what Lakota High School students eat for lunch. And for my data collection, I gave 50 students a survey table on a piece of paper to fill out to each student, and it had 3 categories of eating school lunch, went home, or brought their own lunch, and it had a list of 5 days of 1 week. And I did this because I normally eat school lunch, and I was just curious of what other people do for their lunch, as we only have about 35 minutes for our break. And for my basic comparisons, I did a pie graph and a histogram, and I can see that my pie graph, for going home, it is very low, and it's about 13%, and for eating school lunch, it's 47 with the most, and bringing lunch, that's kind of near eating school lunch, but in the middle. And I also did a histogram, and I can see here that it clearly shows that most people eat school lunch in a week, but it doesn't clearly show that people eat school lunch all 5 days. But it clearly shows that most people do not go home for lunch, probably because we don't have much time, and we live in a very rural school, so people don't really live in town much. And for my summary statistics, I found the mean, median, mode, and standard deviation of all 3 categories, and I can see here that the only thing that is similar between all 3 is the modes. They are all zeros, and the standard deviation and mean for who ate school lunch and brought lunch are similar also. And again, this shows that most people eat the school's lunch, and people who went home is lower. Overall, the data shows that each day may be different depending on what is provided for lunch that day. And then, what is the probability of students who ate school lunch all 5 days? I found that the total of high schoolers who ate all 5 days is very low. So what does this mean? We can clearly see that students who ate school lunch all 5 days is low because many did not eat all 5 days, depending on what was for lunch. If I pull a random selection of 10, I would expect 3 students, give or take 1, that ate school lunch all 5 days. Then I found confidence interval, and this we can conclude with 95% certainty that the population mean for an average student who ate school lunch February 7th through the 11th from Lakota was between 2 to 3 days out of 5 days each week. Is there a difference? I was testing at a significance level of 0.05, and for my ANOVA conclusion, I would reject the null since the p-value is less than 0.05, so at least one of these means is different. This means the means are different, referring that on average, not everyone chooses the same idea for lunch. Then I did a proportional null hypothesis test, and we would reject the null at 95% confidence. Thus, most people do eat lunch at school, either the school provided one or bringing one from home. For my results, I got a p-value of 0.00008 from Excel, and since this is below my significance level, I would reject the null hypothesis. Thus, I can see the means are not the same, thus the 3 choices for what you did for lunch do not have the same average. This doesn't let me say which category is the highest or lowest, but from our earlier data, we can see people who ate school lunch are the highest. And if I wanted to, I could run a Tukey to see if I can tell which was the highest. So what have we learned? I went with the idea that most students eat school lunch, and I generally saw this throughout the row, yet the people who bring lunch was also very close. I can report that some school lunches are more liked by the students than others, just depending on what we're having. And for my future reference, I would do the data by day and not by a week, but with a week's worth, not by a weekly total, because it kind of got confusing with some of my testing that I did. This might also be useful to use a line graph to show how each day is different depending on what lunch was being served. So eat lunch